Welcome to the Starfish Storytellers, the podcast that makes a difference one story at a time by bringing storytelling to life.
I've been working in video marketing and production for over 2 decades, across almost every state in the US and more countries than I can count. And out of all those projects, there's one particular production day I still think about all the time. We were filming in Vermont in October, peak foliage season, with a light dusting of snow sprinkled across the mountaintops overnight. Still dark when we arrived, and you could see your breath. Beautiful, but freezing. This was a narrative shoot, which meant everything had to look exactly right. We needed a very specific location, an auto body shop. Real, working, and authentic. It took weeks of searching, phone calls, and coordination to find the right one. We finally landed on a shop in Manchester. If you've never been there, this is quintessential Vermont. Rolling hills, small town, maple syrup vibes everywhere. We did everything by the book. Contract signed, location fee paid, insurance in place. We even met the mechanic the night before to walk through where lights would go, where talent would stand, and how we'd stage the scene overall. Expectations set. The morning of the shoot, clear skies and the sun is shining exactly as we'd hoped. The art department is finalizing their staging, the crew is dialing in the lighting, talents in hair and makeup. And the client is about 45 minutes out from their call time. Suddenly, a car comes screeching into the parking lot. It slams on the brakes right in front of me. The driver rolls down his window and shouts, "Who is in charge here?" I calmly step forward and say, "That'd be me. Hi, my name is Tim." He looks around at the lights, the crew, the set dressing, and says, "I have no idea what you're doing, but you have no right to be here. I own this building. I need to drop my son at school right now, but by the time I get back, you need to be gone, or I'm calling the cops." Before I can reply, he speeds off. That pit in your stomach feeling hits immediately, because at that point, there's no pause or reset button. The crew is working, the clock is running, the client is almost there, and there are thousands of dollars already on the line. And as the executive producer, I'm the one responsible when something goes wrong, even if it's completely outside my control. But I didn't say anything to the crew. They didn't need that stress. Their job was to do great work. My job was to keep the chaos contained. While I sat there managing my own anxiety, the building owner returned about 15 minutes later. Fortunately, this time he was calmer and willing to talk. I explained our project and our intentions, and I learned what was really going on. Turns out, the mechanic we paid to use the auto shop, well, he was actually being evicted because he hadn't paid rent. The building owner's anger wasn't targeted at me. He was angry that someone else was making money off the building he owned and hadn't been paid for. And suddenly, I understood his position completely. So I asked him one simple question. What would make this okay? He paused, looked out toward Mount Equinox in the distance and said, "If you pay me what you paid him." The client was pulling into the lot, the cast was in wardrobe, we were ready to roll. So I pulled out the checkbook and paid the location fee again. The building owner shook my hand, wished me good luck, and left. We shot the scene, we wrapped the day, the project was a success. And the client never knew anything had almost gone sideways. Once the production vans were packed and after the client had left, I told the crew what had happened. They were stunned. None of them had any idea, and that's the part that stuck with me. Because that day reminded me that storytelling and leadership isn't about control, it's about responsibility. Sometimes the most important part of the story is the part no one ever sees. One decision made quietly that keeps everything else moving. And that's the way I've come to think about video storytelling too. Not as production, but as the careful work of earning trust and protecting the story people are counting on you to tell.
Hello, my name is Liana Henry, and welcome to the Starfish Storytellers. I'm the CEO of the Black Dog Group and your host. I'm passionate about storytelling and on a mission to raise up the next generation of storytellers. We're called the Starfish Storytellers after the moral of the Starfish story, which centers on the power of one. Because no matter how big the challenge, every action matters. One step, one starfish, and one story at a time. Every episode will welcome a new storyteller who will inspire and connect with you. So thanks for tuning in. Now let's get started. Today's episode is telling stories that convert: video, brand, and the power of visual storytelling. And with me today is Tim Bradley. Tim is the founder of Pennant Video, a B2B video marketing agency that helps businesses differentiate, demonstrate, and validate their value through what he calls the video marketing trifecta: anthems, explainers, and endorsements. And he's going to talk more about that in a minute. With nearly 20 years of experience in video production, creative leadership, and agency life, including over a decade at Matter Communications, Tim brings a unique perspective on how storytelling, when done well, can clarify complex ideas, humanize brands, and ultimately drive business growth. Tim, welcome to the Starfish Storytellers. We're so happy to have you here.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this discussion. It's going to be awesome.
So, Tim, we kick off every episode by having our guests introduce themselves in their own words. So would you be willing to share a bit about your journey and how storytelling became such a central part of your work?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm Tim Bradley. I'm the founder of Pennant Video Co. And in the day-to-day, I'm that sort of executive producer role. So managing teams and holding client relations and, just sort of standing up all the projects in the business writ large, right? Yeah, my story, I actually like to call it back to my childhood, where I was fortunate enough that my dad had one of those big clunky like Panasonic VHS camcorders, right? Where he had I was filming my brothers and me like birthday parties and things like that. But he was, gracious enough to let us sort of play with it. And we did like stop motion animation with our Legos, and we did like some narrative sort of like reenactments of famous movie scenes with me and my brothers and things like that, right? So just kind of getting sort of comfortable with the medium overall, and then yeah, it's sort of just that was really the foundation. And from there, went to school for communications, and at the time, video was sort of the predominant medium, right? And then when I left college and went to California for a few years, I did the classic: open up that first credit card, buy that first camera and that MacBook Pro, so I could just really be immersed in the sort of scene and in the space, right? Yeah, so that was kind of the earliest points, and then as you said, from there I spent the better part of a decade agency side, working with everything from like Kickstarter to like Fortune 5 companies in every industry, every type of medium, from short form for social media to big sort of projection mapping event pieces, and everything in between. So a lot of that, of course, brought me to sort of my own sense of like purpose and leadership and responsibility, and the like impact that I wanted to make on for my own life and in the industries that we wanted to serve. So yeah, we founded Pennant Video June of 23. So yeah, we're going on 3 years now, which is awesome.
You've been around almost as long as we have. I mean, we started. This is the third company I've launched, but we started in February of 23.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
yeah. So we're still new at this. And I'm going to ask a lot of questions about where did the name Pennant Video come from, and yeah, so I really want to get into that. But thank you so much for sharing that story. I got to be honest, I wanted to throw up when I was listening to you, because I could feel, it was so well told, and I could feel the stress of you're the face, you're the responsibility. If everything goes south, everybody's looking at you. I think your story just demonstrated how your leadership skills just really kicked into gear, and you were the calm in that moment, and that's exactly what needed to happen. So that was really amazing. I think your journey that you just talked about highlights how video storytelling isn't just about production and flashy visuals. It's about clarity, intention, and trust. In a world where businesses are constantly competing for attention, and I know you have clients where you're helping them with that, the brands that stand out are the ones that really know who they are and can communicate that story with confidence and honesty. And great video storytelling doesn't just tell people what you do, it helps them feel why it matters. It creates understanding, shortens the distance between a brand and its audience, and gives people the information they need to make informed decisions. So when storytelling is rooted in authenticity, it becomes more than marketing. It becomes that bridge between purpose and action. Right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's like, and that, the word I anchored that story in is responsibility, right? Where it's like the responsibility to the craft and the medium and the audience, right? And like what they really need, especially in business. What does that audience need in this moment to empower better decision making? That's really the goal. And yeah, it's amazing. I love it.
Yeah. So kind of kicking things off, you talked about your dad's VHS recording camcorder. I remember having one. I remember when my kids were babies having a little tiny one, probably, you know, not the one like your dad's, but I had a small one. And do you remember at what point did you feel like storytelling could be more than just a creative outlet, that it could really become your career?
Yeah, I think it was definitely the bridge from college to live. My wife and I, then girlfriend, now wife, we moved to Lake Tahoe, California, and we, with the intention of let's do the snowboard bum thing for a winter season, and because it's just epic scenery out there. The more we just like myself, the more I just sort of got invested and spent time in that sort of DIY culture that is inherent to like snowboarding and sort of like action sports and outdoor lifestyle overall. It just really just sort of something clicked and infused like, oh my gosh, there's so much power in this, and that ability to record, the documentary style of like something happening and then setting sort of pace and tone and the delivery of that in the edit. And that's where I learned to like produce. So sort of like, how do I plan and do all the sort of logistics of things and coordination and sort of expectation setting with everybody overall to have a successful day and just be aligned really on like what the purpose is at the end of this. And that was also when started working with brands too. It's just like, oh, beyond just sort of having fun out in the snow with our friends, right? It's like, oh, this, the brands that they attach themselves to this because it's authentic and it's real. And again, that sort of DIY aspect was sort of the catalyst to all of that. And then when I went to Matter, my old agency, I love telling this story because this is circa 2011. I found the role for video production specialist on Craigslist. So it's just really funny. That's where it was. But I was the first creative hire at the time was a burgeoning sort of public relations agency, right? And so having that opportunity, that's sort of like what I'm calling now that entrepreneurial spirit, right? Whereas I got to sort of pave a path for that whole sort of department. And by the time, it's sort of the peak before I left, I was responsible for like 25 staff members, and we had a huge book of business and working with all of these premier sort of clients, and all that entire sort of path from like DIY to entrepreneurial was just sort of like set me on my course and give me that sort of courage to found Pennant.
So you were with Matter for a while.
Yeah, about 12
And
years. Yep.
yeah, I know you just said that, but can you maybe elaborate a little bit more on that push that that pushed you to make that leap and build your own agency?
Yeah, sure. The there's sort of 2 points. The first one, it was just after producing, thousands and thousands of pieces of like content, right? It was just like everything from podcast to, live productions, because, we lived through the pandemic. So there's a lot of that. Every type
Yeah.
of video deliverable possible, ranging from like commercials to, short documentaries to testimonials and explainer videos and, event coverage and internal communications and social media, just kind of like everything, right? It got to a point where I was like, I don't know the impact that this is making really anymore. Like we're sort of just on this hamster wheel of just like produce. And while that's fine and obviously very successful and lucrative in its own way, it was just like, what impact is this work really putting out into the world, And so at the same time, it was like just sort of recognizing my own abilities and confidence and sort of looking in the mirror and having, conversations with my wife about like, I could make this leap, and it would sort of feel like I've crested some semblance of a mountain peak or a view, and I'm just kind of going back down and doing the route again, just sort of like rebuilding it. So it's sort of familiar in that way. So, and then, so from there, if I was to segue hard to Pennant, is just like that opportunity to be really focused, not only in just sort of craft and discipline and like building a formidable creative team. It was more like, how can this work that we're producing make the most impact for the people we're serving? So our B2B marketing peers and partners, right, is like having that really specific middle of the funnel focus tact. And then as you described earlier, that video marketing trifecta, that framework really that helps serve our marketing peers in delivering the best sort of impact outcomes on their business, while also empowering their audiences, right? Those audiences that need to make informed decisions.
You talked about, I'm going off script here for a second.
Please. I feel like I've already meandered.
Yeah. No. You talked about wanting to start an agency that was because you wanted to know about how you were making an impact. Are you able to point your finger at a place and say, yeah, here's where I'm making an impact, and here's how my work is making an impact over here? Because I think we can definitely get into the whole, like you said, this churning out of the content and churning out of, production. And yes, I can go back and I can look at the analytics and I can measure, that's great. But I want to know, right, that what we're doing is making some change, is making a difference, sort of on a bigger level. So like, how do you know? Where can you point to something that you can say, yeah, and this is how?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of it is, to your point, sort of anecdotal or qualitative to the people, our points of contact that we're working with. And in turn, it shows when we have this sort of retention that we do year over year, and they keep coming back for more work, right? But ultimately on the business level, we really work in industries that I sort of describe as ones that hold the values of safety, security, and sustainability, right? So these are industries like med tech and life sciences and healthcare, cybersecurity, sort of data, sort of SaaS more broadly, right? Climate tech, green tech, energy. So sort of these industries that are not only like sort of like in a constant state of innovation and competition, and therefore primed for storytelling, which is good for everybody's business, but it's also like they're having, the impact on on our future, right? So that get out of bed every morning and how we approach, right? But it's also, and more explicitly in the day to day, like we are helping our marketers, our marketing partners at these inflection points with the business, right? We're usually working with them when they have a new positioning or a new brand identity that they need to go to market with, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have a new product or line of business that they're launching, and we need to serve, to help produce and tell that story for them. They have these awesome sort of like customer heroes, right? They have customers that have these really amazing stories to tell, and we can help in that way. Or in more sort of the calendar cycle of things, like sales kickoffs or customer experience events or big flagship sort of trade show or events that they hold, right? So it's in these, again, sort of inflection points or pivotal moments for this business. That's why there's so much sort of shared responsibility and that trust to like produce something that's going to be impactful to this moment, and obviously like serve the next whatever month or not month, but sort of chapter of their business. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a client right now who is on the brink of that sort of rebrand rollout. And, obviously there's so many moving parts in order to make that happen. But we recommended for them to make it a slow rollout because we didn't want to shock their audience. Their audience has been with them for 35, 36 years, 37 years. And it's always been one way. And so now they're going in a really different direction. But I think they are ready for this. I think this is the time. but I also think it is such an important moment where what you do and, what we do is uh, to really tell their story. And we're in the process right now of trying to sort of bring in perspective from the audience as well. Not that it's going to change the direction of the rebrand. The rebrand is happening, but just as we're introducing the rebrand, just kind of really going back and looking at where were we, where did we come from, and what's in our future, and really telling those stories. And I find that as we're doing things like social media management for them, bringing some of the past in, people really engage with that.
Absolutely.
And they really enjoy that. And I think it will open the door for the rebrand to be, I think, more accepted. So,
Yeah, man, I love those responsibilities so much and those opportunities of like you kind of get to balance the sympathy for the person that you're working with and like, they have tremendous sort of pressures internally and just for themselves and in their career trajectory or their own sort of passions, right? But then you get to hold empathy for the audience, right? And like what they need in this moment to recognize, yeah, this is a paradigm shift, but this is what it really means and how it benefits really everybody at the end of the day, right? And it's like, yeah, that's a lot of the like care, I guess is a word I boil it down to a lot of times, is the care that an objective partner like a Pennant or like you, right, can like bring to the table and bring that objectivity and bring, a little bit of devil's advocate-ness, to the situations and push back and just make sure you're doing not only what's right for the business, but what's right for the audience, right? Because like they're the ones that have the feedback loop in that way to the business. So yeah, those types of opportunities, those like rebrands or sort of paradigm shift moments are huge, and those are kind of that feather in the cap for us as like creatives and storytellers, right? Cool.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. When we met to prep, we talked a little bit about your video marketing trifecta. And I know those are 3 pillars that you've developed. And you just mentioned it earlier when we were just talking. So I was hoping that we could maybe sort of segue into that a little bit. I know the full sort of your platform is video marketing trifecta, anthems, explainers, and endorsements. I'm guessing it's definitely coming from a lot of experience, but can you walk us through those 3 pillars and why they're so effective for B2B companies?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, anthems, explainers, and endorsements. Those are ultimately the deliverables, right? Like the tools, the things that empower that better decision making for audiences, but really sales enablement and marketing for that brand, right? Another way I look at it is you have this opportunity to answer a lot of the FAQs, like why you exist, what you do, how you do it, who is this for, and where, in like three prongs of a tripod, I guess, right? Differentiation, demonstration, and validation, right? So I'll go through each of those specifically. Differentiation is those anthem videos, right? Your sort of mission, values based videos, but ultimately they're meant to describe why you exist, why you're different, why your audience should care, right? These pieces are typically kind of short form, usually like 60 seconds, very sort of anthemic in nature, right? And they should speak the heartstrings of this audience very explicitly. They're not meant for advertising. They're meant for that top of the middle of the funnel, if this means much to your audience. But in the sort of buyer's journey of things, right? Like they're not necessarily meant to drive awareness. They're meant to, in all of these prongs really, are meant to infuse trust in the consideration phase of the buyer's journey. Okay. So anthems equals differentiation. The next prong is those explainer videos, right? Like everyone has them ultimately because they're very effective. They describe what you do and how you do it, right? And especially in, the sort of like B2B world we live in, a lot of these industries are very complex and have a lot of nuance and a lot of sort of legal and things to consider, right? So clarity is kind of the best thing you can provide with these explainer videos. If we're sort of laddering this, anthems, and now you've drawn them in with the hearts, and now explainers, you're speaking to the minds of this audience, right? The last prong are those endorsement videos, those that validation, that third party validation, customer stories, testimonials. They're all sort of synonymous here, right? But really, of course, they're meant to showcase who this is for and where, right? And so Again, you're drawing this audience in. Again, in B2B, these sales cycles can be 3, 6, 9 months long. So how do you produce a journey when it comes to these and these tools, these flagship assets, we like to call them, right? Really round out a strategic roadmap for marketers and sales enablement holistically. I could go into depth further there, but that's sort of the genesis of like the framework, right? And then our team at Pennant is comprised of writers and motion designers and art directors and producers and production. So we're typically helping our clients from script to screen, right? And producing these premier sort of flagship assets, and then sort of any other derivatives that might be helpful from a campaign perspective.
Mm-hmm. And with each type of video, like you just explained, as a storytelling tool, do you find that are you working with brands and clients where you're getting to sort of put all of these different videos into effect? You get to use the full package of tools.
Yeah.
And are you finding that I'm sure that your clients are just getting great results?
Yeah, especially when you tailor or line it back up with like these paradigm shift or like, sort of inflection points, right? It's like these tools in sort of each and individually are meant to serve a different point, right? That differentiation, demonstration, or validation, but they have this sort of compounding effect internally because as you just described earlier, it's like storytelling is really, I mean, it's so messy in its own way, and it's complicated, but then it's very at the end of the creative process, very clear and therefore effective. And so we get to hold this responsibility of like, stakeholder input, audience feedback, data, research, trends, storytelling mechanics, right? And really compress so much of, like, I sort of describe it as a sandwich in a way, right? Like sort of all these layers of deliciousness and then make this like really refined piece at the end. So yeah, it does so much work, like so much work at all of these layers of like messaging and tone and how we express this and the identity overall. All of those are super critical, important to business overall. Then you create this tool that can then tell a story cohesively, consistently, repeatedly. You know what I mean? So there's just so much power in the medium. And then because of that, and research shows this, video is the preferred medium by audiences everywhere, right? It's so impactful. And then, when you do it with sort of the specificity of exactly the story you want to tell and where it's going to live and who this is for, right? It's just like, it's so powerful.
I love that. I love what you said about storytelling is messy. I think people come to the table knowing that they want to tell a story. They just don't really know how.
Absolutely.
And having sort of that toolkit of tools at their disposal, like you're talking about, really, like you said, brings that order and builds layers, in a way that in the end, you're giving them, I mean, because we all know video is king as far as content. It is, and you're going to get the most engagement from video versus static anything. And there's a fair amount of people obviously that want to DIY it. So I love that you get to bring sort of the polish that their DIY isn't ever going to have. And interesting, I do want to kind of go off script for a minute too. I want to ask a question that had come up for me today. There's different types of videos and different lengths for different platforms that make sense. And I do a lot of social media management. And so we play with different lengths. We try to keep them really super short because everybody pretty much has the attention span of a goldfish, but
Yep.
we like to keep those short. I read somewhere recently that advertising is pivoting again, and they're leaning into the bigger cinematic types of ads, especially for like TV ads. Are you finding that with your clients? Are you finding that any of your clients are really starting to want to do more of that? Or are they sticking more to that real structured short form type of video?
Yeah, a couple things to unpack there. So, and just quick context setting. So, like most of the brands we're working with, and it's kind of a nice signal for us when we have like a new client at our doorstep, is like they tend to have resources in house, right? Like they have like the video guy or they have like a small creative team, right? And
Hmm.
what's awesome about that for everybody is that they're the ones that are doing the sort of day to day, almost like operationally minded work that video can do per the DIY you just described, right? So they can do the thought leadership pieces, they can do the internal communications, they can do the short form spontaneous work like on social media, right?
Right.
They can do the event coverage and the recruiting and employer branding work, like because they're on the front lines of like what's happening in the business. And that I describe as sort of like bottom of the funnel type of work, right? Which is very important. But it can be a bit more scrappy, right? Because it's like it's so
Hmm.
front lines and so recurring and common and frequent, right?
Yep.
Now, why Pennant exists in the middle of the funnel is that we can support that layer of folk and of creatives with that higher degree of production value because as you just sort of are I think conveying here is first impressions count, right? So it's like you should
Hmm.
be producing sort of the right amount of production value or infusing the right amount of production value into this middle of the funnel work because this is
Hmm.
where trust lives and dies. You know what I mean? It's the
Hmm.
the messy middle, right? So to have refined pieces that are very specific and have clarity and are responsible to the audience in this moment, that's why this work works, right? And then, as you just described, the awareness, like the advertising aspect of this, again, like that's also your sort of like first impression counts, but it tends to be more um, like fishing with a net or something, just kind of like, everything. Whereas mid funnel is a bit more like spear fishing or something. I don't actually fish, so I don't know why I'm going with this analogy, but I hope it makes the point.
Yes, one of my children is a avid deep sea fisherman. So all I hear from him all the time is fishing. So we're very familiar with fishing, and so that's a great analogy because I mean I think sometimes as marketers we know and we work with clients who want to cast the wider net, but you don't really have control over what you're going to catch.
Mhm.
Whereas sort of that mid funnel spear fishing, you can be a little bit more tactical about, a little more specific or strategic in what you're going after for sure. But are you seeing people wanting more cinematic advertising? Do you do any of that or you don't?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the nice thing about our business model because we just live in this trust building space of the mid funnel. That is exactly where we concentrate. Not to go on a total tangent, but my business partners actually run they're like union signator commercial production advertising shop, right? So like that's what's nice about the business model, and their name's Vagrants, just to get it out there. Like they focus on top funnel and then we focus on mid funnel. So there's a nice
Mm-hmm.
symbiosis between our businesses. And then for us, when we do our own go to market and marketing, how we talk and how I jump on podcasts, right? It's very specific to the mid funnel, which is awesome.
Yeah, yeah, great. Um, okay. So I was hoping to get an example of a you don't have to give the name of the client if you don't want to, but a project maybe where you were able to promote it visually and make it stand out. I think a lot of B2B brands um, want to tell their stories, but some particular brands and products can be on the technical side. And I know I work with a lot of clients in software. And so the storytelling is less about the product and more about what it does. Um, so how do you help clients move past that type of a mindset where like, oh, our product is not exciting enough? And how do you uncover stories that are actually compelling?
Yeah, I love that question. So a lot of it starts with just like being a good listener, I suppose, right? So it's like understanding so our point of contact, let's say they're a product marketer or something, right? We ask this 101 level questions about, of course, the product and like what problem is it solving? That's usually a really helpful first set of answers, right? But then also gleaning kind of what's in it for the product marketing person themselves? Like, what are their general ambitions for this moment? Are they just box checking, or are they like, no, let's make something really awesome here that has a big sort of moment, right? We also kind of get to understand, the dynamics of the business themselves and sort of leadership and all the things that ultimately build that sort of sympathy arm that I was describing earlier, like for the moment, for the person that we're working with. But then we go the steps further of like, well, let's at least talk to head of sales. Let's at least review all of their customer stories and things that may exist either in video form or in written form, right? Like we got to understand what the competitive sort of landscape is here, right? Like just immerse and be that proactive listener to the situation and like understand what this really means to everybody, right? And then we come back with the right approach ultimately. Like as I described earlier, we do production, we also do motion design. And when we're talking about, as you described, B2B, some of this stuff, when we talk about data and cybersecurity and software at large, it's pretty like ethereal stuff, So it's like, what's the right combination of like ensuring we're leading with human beings, humanity, but also brand identity, and how can motion design help translate a very like busy user interface into something that's eye-catching and interesting, and that sort of draws, engagement wise, draws people in on the video, right?
Mm.
So yeah, it's a lot of like table setting from there, and then it's really like the confidence in process, like being, hey, client, we are going to champion this project on your behalf. We are going to lead with objectivity and with your audience's best intentions in mind. And per the milestones along the way, we will give you things to react to. We need you to react to this like you would an audience or like a prospective buyer, right? Otherwise, we're going to lose the forest for the trees or whatever. So that's super important too. And that's where like, having rock solid like creatives and craftsmen and et cetera really helps everything sing. And yeah, it's like, as we were saying earlier, taking all of the pieces of tone and sentiment and pacing and design and production and lighting and audio and sound design. It's just like perfectly complicated. And like, that's, I think, why we all do it, right? It's like so cool to see this grand 1,000-piece puzzle like get assembled, and these aha or like revelation or just exciting moments for the client is like, oh my gosh, like you took me from like, I don't even know where to begin to like now this really powerful tool that I've deployed across all of our digital channels, but I've armed our sales force with. We use it at kickoffs and et cetera, et cetera. So it's really has this ripple effect internally, which is awesome to see.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's nice that it's got multi-use, and you're taking content that is information and breathing life into it with a story, especially with videos, um, and letting people be able to connect with it. Because I think that's what video does. It connects people. So
Yeah, it's like we say, it's like meeting your audience where they are in that moment, right?
mm-hmm.
Like some of it is like kind of perfectly hypothetical, but there's enough sort of experience and knowledge to make the best right assumptions to the moment of your audience is going to be here. This is, your sort of ICPs and the people we're talking to and their pain points and like who they need to, get buy-in from. It's like with B2B, and why we love it is like there's layers of decision makers and therefore layers of complex storytelling and how we navigate that, and like, sort of toying with ratios of like, we're largely talking to this audience and this is how we need to speak with them, but there's this sliver of this audience that actually has the money.
I think videos, especially like demo videos that are done really well, that don't just show somebody clicking around a screen, but really sort of demonstrate sort of the impact. They're really powerful. And like you said, is this a technical audience? Is this, like you said, the layers of decision makers? Like, are the folks that are going to use this? Are they the ones that are going to really get the most out of this? So you really have quite the task in front of you, I think, as you are producing these.
Yeah, like again, I've said this word a couple of times, but it's like care. Like you have to have the right amount of care. Care for the moment and what this really means, care for all the nuances along the way, right? Care for the craft and for storytelling at large, So there's a lot of responsibility with that, and obviously I enjoy it. So
yeah. And here you are at Pennant.
Yep.
Okay, before we wrap up, I want to try something new. I want to do this quick takes rapid round. I want to throw a bunch of questions at you and see, just give me a short answer, whatever comes to mind first.
Sure.
How's that sound? Okay, cool.
Great.
Okay, here we go. So, what's one word clients always use to describe their brand that you secretly wish they wouldn't?
Probably innovative, I guess. It's kind of become pretty vanilla. But it's a starting block to pry back the layers of the onion. Yeah.
Yeah. It's gonna get the conversation started. What's the biggest storytelling cliche you see in corporate videos?
Uh, a lot of it's just like how the whole thing begins. I think AI kind of is the main culprit to this, but sort of in a world where that type of beginning or
Dot
like
dot dot.
yeah, in this ever evolving landscape, it's just kind of like the most lazy way to begin or to hook an audience into the story you're about to tell.
Yeah. When you're watching a video, what's the first sign that tells you this is great storytelling?
Writing for sure. Just sort of like
Mm,
the pacing and cadence of it and the right use of words and emphasis and all of that. It's when we have our Slack channel and sort of this inspiration work, right? It's almost always starts with the writing.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. You need the copy. You need the words. And then what's one thing you wish every business understood about video storytelling before they hit record?
There is not a silver bullet. Like there's no one video to rule them all, right? So I think just having the forethought and intention of like, all right, this type of work is gonna do the work we need it to do in this moment for this reason, and it'll work for you.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, that was fun. Thanks for participating.
Of course.
Well, that is all the time we have for today. I want to thank you, Tim, so much for joining us and reminding us that storytelling isn't just about creativity; it's about clarity, connection, and courage. And to our listeners, whether you've first heard us locally through BTV studios in Bedford, Massachusetts, or you're tuning in from across the globe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Amazon Podcasts, thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time. Happy storytelling!